Hi there. My name is Dr. Claire Kinuthia, and this is Circling the Rabbit Hole, your go-to health and wellness podcast. This is a safe space for all matters sexual, reproductive, and related mental health. Hi, everyone, and welcome to another week, another episode. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast this week. Today, we focus on period shaming, what exactly period shaming means, what period stigma is. And I think I have the best person for this conversation because she embodies advocacy against period shaming and period stigma. She's one of the people who fight for period justice and has pushed me so that this podcast now exists.
Yes. I love to see it.
So I don't know that anybody needs to have an introduction to who she is, but we do have audio listeners. So for their benefit.
I love the way Dr. Claire is trying to be like, it's not that I'm trying to make you feel like people don't know you. It's fine. It's also fine if they don't. It's also fine if they don't. First of all, thank you for having me. Congrats. I'm so happy to see you do this.
Right?
It so fits you and suits you. So I'm really happy to see you do it.
We've come full circle.
We've come full circle
because literally I started off and the idea came to me by being a guest on your podcast.
Yes.
And so, wow.
Because I was just listening to her and I'm like, how does she not have her own podcast? I think my face started changing as you were talking.
Yeah, true.
So this is your gift. This is an extension of your gift. So I'm really happy that you started it.
And thank you for pushing me and holding me accountable. Thank you so much. Yeah.
So I'm Janet Mbugua. My background is in media. I'm a media personality. I was a news anchor for about a decade. Before then, I was on radio. So kind of been in media all my life, I would say.
Right.
And then through there, kind of transitioned to advocacy. So now I'm an activist, an author, content creator, and mom of two lovely boys. And definitely really big, a decade on pushing for menstrual justice.
That's fantastic. Yeah. And it's fantastic also to see that we can even talk about menstrual anything.
Yes.
Menstruation, periods, without calling them
those things. Time of them. What was it called? What was it called? Yeah, Mshara. Somebody was asked, like, what did you just...
My auntie Flo is... God, Red Sea. We had so many nicknames. I've even lost track because... We had so much shame around it, especially younger. Yeah. I think things have changed a lot now, but there's still more to be done as well. What drove you towards advocacy for menstrual justice?
And it's funny, I didn't even know terms like that existed. True. I mean, they're relatively new-ish, but I was in the newsroom 10 years ago. I can't believe it's been 10 years. And I hosted a social justice or social impact program every Monday. Mm-hmm. And then there was this topic that came up, because we'd pick the topics as the news team. Mm-hmm. And at the time, Farida, who later on became the Cabinet Secretary for Lands, but before she was the COO, and she said, we're going to talk about period poverty. And I remember there being a resounding no in the newsroom, not targeting just the men, but it was largely them saying, you're going to talk about what?
Right, yeah.
And she pushed back. She's like, it's going to happen because it's something that's affecting girls' education, teen pregnancy. And so in the end, Lulu Hassan and Judy Koskei went to Marigat in Baringo and did this story that was later named Periods of Shame. Right. And it was such a powerful insight through the stories of two young girls who were at the time 12 and 13, showing themselves using like goat hide, showing it to the camera, soil, chicken feathers to manage their period.
Right.
And talking about the teen pregnancy that their peers were facing or the shame that you've just talked about.
Yeah.
And that just, I don't know, it really shook me because that's something that I deal with every month. And here we are seeing girls actually missing an education and compromising their future because of shame, because of lack of access to products.
Right.
And so it shook a lot of us, to be honest. It shook our privilege. It shook our womanhood.
Because again, you don't realize that the fact that you have options is already a privilege.
There you go.
Right? You take it for granted.
Yeah, you just go pick. You can even be like, oh, today we'll try a different
we're even
product.
fussy. Like, I like this one because of the color.
There you go.
I like this one because, it treats, I don't have a reaction, or it smells better, or it's more discreet.
We have options. And they have none.
Right.
And so when that story aired and I brought a panel onto my program based on the story, and then everyone was outraged online for like 2 days.
Really?
Which was good to see.
Right.
Yeah, Kenyans were like, I'm sorry, how is it 2013 and girls are not in school because of this? And so one thing led to another. And this is the power of even like what you're doing, which is mainstreaming this conversation.
Right.
Because when you do that, you bring it out of the darkness.
True.
And that's what we did that day, because suddenly the budgetary allocation was increased, the budgetary allocation in Parliament. There were some MPs who, after the story, say we stage managed it, which we were just like, yeah, of course we would spend so much time doing that. But quickly changed tune when the then First Lady got involved. It became a really big conversation.
Right.
And I couldn't stop talking about it even beyond doing the Inuadada initiative in Marigat, because we went back to that county months later, you know, and it was this big event. And I'm like, okay, now we've all gone home. And then, because I recall girls being given pads and not knowing what to do with them. And that image stuck with me.
Right.
So then I ended up registering in Inuadada Foundation a few months later. And here we are.
Right.
So I kind of got into it because of this story that maybe shook me into a kind of reality that I couldn't put a name on.
Yeah.
And then I just kind of continued to speak and mainstream it and join other voices. And I just never shied away. And I can maybe credit part of my upbringing in not being shy about talking about these issues.
Right, yeah.
Because for some reason, people were wowed by the fact that I was talking about it, which showed you that not many people were willing
to talk about it.
And then I transitioned that onto digital media and then continued it on my Instagram and social media to just say, can we get more access because we still have an issue? And then just kind of later diversified, whether it was doing a book, a podcast, just to keep the conversation going. And I just don't think I'll ever stop talking about it.
I mean, it makes a difference that we can have this conversation, because I feel like because of the work you did then, it's now a normal conversation to have.
Right.
And the more we keep having the conversations, engaging in dialogue, involving men and boys in these conversations, the more normalized it is. Because again, my biggest struggle is how we've managed to shame ourselves and allowed others to shame us about a normal body function.
That's really well put and very profound. It's like we've allowed ourselves to be shamed.
Right.
We've normalized shaming. And it's great to see us now pushing back. Quite a few people are saying, actually, no, I'm fine.
Yeah.
But even then, it's a bit of an uphill task because the world still wants to remind you in many ways.
True.
You know, and I think it's just, in very many ways, it's sexism, it's patriarchy, it's internalized patriarchy if women are doing it. It's just these things that when you push back and sit in your truth, it makes people uncomfortable.
True.
And that's what we need to keep pushing back on.
Right, true. Yeah. From your experience working, because you're working in the field, you're working with the girls, where are we now in 2023?
That's a really good question.
We took our ground. Because we can still sit in our privilege and say things have changed or have gotten better.
The more things change, the more they stay the same, is the best way I can describe this.
Right.
I mean, the other day I was just like, it's okay. We'll keep going. A mentor of mine was like, Janet, progress is fragile. And that stayed in my head. He's like, it's going to keep having these great breakthroughs and then 10 steps back. That's what it is.
Right.
And so sitting in that has helped just navigate it, because otherwise it's very exhausting and heartbreaking when you're like, can you not see that there's a problem? But at the time, I remember when we did Periods of Shame, the number was about 2.2 million girls that were missing out. And I think the latest statistics we saw, I shouldn't say latest, but the last we saw from UNICEF was 1.1 million.
Right. Okay.
So if that stands, and I believe it does because it's data that's there, then it means we've made a significant difference.
Yeah.
But 1.1 is still a problem.
Still
that's
a huge
like over a million.
Number, yeah.
And that's probably it probably needs to be revised because post-COVID, I'm willing to bet it's gone up as well.
True.
So where are we? The advocacy through platforms like this is the most gratifying thing that we can see today. So many people are talking about it.
Right,
It's been normalized. Menstrual Hygiene Day used to be like a little, blip somewhere. Now there's a massive week-long conversation around it. There's a lot more male allies in the space.
Right.
And there's just a lot more normalcy. But at the same time, there's still the gatekeepers of patriarchy who are like, no, we don't talk about.
Yeah, we don't do.
We don't do that. Periods.
We're not going to talk.
We're not going to talk about that. Like, behave yourself type thing.
Really?
So what's changed is the conversation has mainstreamed more, which means it's encouraging more people to even come out with their stories and their truth, which is great because somebody could be sitting with an issue thinking they're suffering it alone. I remember putting up a post. I'm laughing because I'll never forget my mom being like, why do you do so? Because I get asked questions. It's always our moms. And my dad's like, it's great. It was 2020, heart of COVID, and I was with the boys and the nanny, and I stood up to walk for us to go to the living room. And Huru, my now soon-to-be 8-year-old, was like, Mom, did you sit on a red flower?
Oh,
I was like, that was very poetic.
Yeah,
very poetic.
Yeah.
So I didn't really know what she was saying. Then Honey looked like she was hyperventilating, like, oh, my stain. I'm like, calm down.
Yeah, it's okay.
They are 4 and 1.
Yeah.
At the time, they were very young boys. I'm
Right.
like, it's fine.
Yeah.
But I had stained. And what I did is I took a picture and posted that and talked about periods.
I get where your mom was coming from.
But what it did, I'll never forget the probably 1,000 plus comments of people almost exhaling, saying, oh my gosh, this is what happened when I stained. And a few of them saying, oh my God, thank you for allowing us to share our stories. And things like that make me realize it takes platforms like these for people to say, oh, I can share my story, or I'm not abnormal.
I'm not abnormal. This is actually normal.
This is actually normal.
There's always that narrative that if it happened to Janet, if it happens to Dr. Claire, then I'm not an alien. This is okay. I can calm down about it.
Yeah.
And it helps a lot of women sit back and go like, okay, I'm normal.
Yeah.
It's not where we should be, but at least it's somewhere.
It's somewhere, given just how we are cultured and how a lot of things like this are not taught, so it's just brushed over.
Right.
We don't have this comprehensive education as we should. It's done through, again, platforms like these ones or CSOs or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But so mainstreaming the conversation has become a lot more accepted. Policy, I feel like we flirt with policy. We have these great moments that happen that push us into activism, but it kind of goes silent. So there's a lot that's changed, but a lot has stayed the same. We still have shaming happening in a big way. We still have lack of access to products and information. That's the biggest heartbreak.
True.
Yes, a lot has changed, but until we're able to get information to as many people, to everyone, then we're still kind of,
There's still work to be done.
We're still work to be done, and we're still holding back society.
Right.
Yeah.
For those who struggle with understanding definitions or these new terms, how would you define period justice? What is period justice?
Yeah, I like the way Dr. Claire, who is like the expert. By the way, you should know it's a little intimidating to be on your podcast. I'm just saying.
Listen, safe space.
Before you start saying, Janet, actually the term
means
we can edit that. It's fine. But period justice is ensuring that access to product information is available to everyone, but especially women and girls.
Right.
That's the justice.
Right.
Justice is I have access. It's in my hands. It's in my mind. And so injustice is that censorship and the lack of access to products.
Right.
And so that's the best way to describe it. It's a right because it is a human right. Periods are, and anything to do with menstruation and menstrual rights is a human rights issue.
It's a human right.
And as long as there's injustice, like shaming, like poverty, then it means that we're not getting that access, that justice to be accessed as it should.
Right.
So that's what it is. So if somebody doesn't have access, it's an injustice, to them, and it's an affront to their human rights.
To the human rights.
Yeah.
Right. It's funny that you say that I'm asking as a doctor, but the reason I'm asking is because as a doctor, the thing we have to remember about our training is it's very hands-on, fix a problem. So we don't really address normal. So even there are lots of doctors who'll be watching or listening and go like, oh, right, that's what that is.
Is it more technical?
It's much more technical for us, and it's much more about fixing an issue. So you come in with period pain, that's where I come in as a doctor. If you're having a heavy period, if there's an abnormality to something that is outside of what you should be experiencing, then the doctor knows what to do with that. But a lot of times we still have shaming among doctors within the community, basically because you will have patients come in and there's the assumption that, oh, she's faking the pain, or she's trying to get out of school, get out of work. She's looking for a doctor's note or a prescription for a strong painkiller that she doesn't really need. So there's a little bit of injustice in the medical setup itself, especially so male doctor facing female patient, because there's a removed, I don't understand your experience, and so I don't know how to make it, make sense.
That's so interesting. And sometimes I can't solve it. And sometimes that's a frustration, and then it's projected as gaslighting.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. And shaming medical communities, so many industries that you think would know better, still have internalized, prejudice or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And it's hard to see, and we also think about corporate spaces and how some HR folks should be the ones at the front of saying, we need to encourage this policy. If somebody has an issue and the doctor has said they need menstrual leave twice a month, But sometimes they're the biggest perpetrators saying,
exactly,
we went through it, we're fine, we're standing, you need to get it together.
Right.
So it is sad to see that those who you think would be allies sometimes just need to re-educate. Like, you need to unlearn and relearn certain things.
That's true.
And I think sometimes there's a fear of relearning, because you're like, what do you mean relearning? I know what I know.
I know, and I'm the authority.
Exactly.
So why are you challenging
But times
me?
are changing, people are evolving. We have a demographic that's very unapologetic and vocal, and it's up against a demographic that's very tight-lipped. And so sometimes those worlds clash.
Yeah, they clash.
They really clash. And it's like, no, you need to kind of also find ways to debunk what you think you've known and just learn, just be teachable, still hold your space as an authority, but maybe integrate empathy. That'd be lovely.
Start there.
Start there. Just start
Especially, we joked about it off camera, but the worst perpetrators tend to be women. Yes. We tend to come at each other because, and it's not just like with periods, it also comes around with pregnancy, with PMS. And you go like, you're acting like this because it's your period. You're acting like this because you're pregnant. Who do you think you are? You think you're special. If I came in and said I'm suffering, I'm in a lot of pain today, and instead of empathizing with me, you shut me down and actually go like, why would you even talk about it? Please, can you think here, me, I don't suffer? Yeah. That's how it's actually put. You think us, we don't suffer the same issues. Do you see us advertising for sympathy or whatever? And I think it's still sad to see that it's still happening, but there's hope because now we can actually even have those conversations. Before, if I was in pain on my period at work, it was not a conversation I was having.
Yeah,
you just suck it up, sit in a bad mood in a corner, and suffer through the day.
And I think those are like social norms. Men largely I call them gatekeepers of patriarchy, but a lot of women are, because it's these internalized social norms. And it is very unfortunate. And they almost feel like they are, having to project the same patriarchy that's being projected on them. And so, it's men, it's women. And at the end of the day, there's so many people who feel lost and almost diminished because of it. But it's good now to see things like menstrual leave, like I think Spain has it. And I know it's going to become, a lot of this one day is going to become the norm. The journey is a little tough because you're pushing back on something that's been, the norm.
Yeah.
And changes, for some people, they're just like, we don't change things.
We don't change these things. We're happy with how things have been.
Yeah.
Get used to it.
Get used to it. But change is inevitable. It's uncomfortable.
Right.
And eventually, even if you don't, you'll be forced to. So you'd rather adapt.
Yeah.
And again, it's with what we were just saying. Empathy, just take a minute to listen. Take a minute to understand. You may not fully ever understand. But if you read enough, the data is there. Also the data is there.
Now we have access to information.
Open a new tab. Just open a new tab. The way you surf, open a new tab and talk and ask about it.
Yeah.
So, because sometimes when people come at us with questions around, it's just in your head. By the way, we still get stuff like that.
Right, yes.
And or they'll be like, that can't be true. I'm like, so I've taken so much time to curate this content and post it because it's not true.
Because it's not true. And I just came up with this statistics.
I just came up with it
somewhere.
Because it's super fun.
Yeah.
When you could have opened a new tab.
Right.
So, ignorance is going to be there. People who want to... There's a big thing I've been saying about silencing the agency of people, of everyone, men, women, boys and girls, but especially of girls and women, where the more agency we're getting, the more aware we are of our bodies, of our rights, the more pushback we're getting. So it's almost like we're doing this dance with progress and persecution and rolling back all the progress we've made. And it's honestly a little scary to see where the loud voices, the voices that honestly, a lot of the time make no sense. We're able to strategize and mobilize and infiltrate and come out the loudest.
True.
And I think we spent a lot of time saying, those people and their noise. They're just hecklers.
Yeah.
And now the hecklers have people's attention.
Laws.
And then they change laws.
And
now
take us back to, I don't even know what
prehistoric
century.
times.
Yeah, I'm like, it's like, what?
So now we have a lot more work to do.
True.
Like, it's now kind of gone up to being like an uphill battle.
True.
Again.
Right. You mentioned your boys, and I like that conversation. You also mentioned that we still have a gap in education. What role do you think we need to play, parents now with children, young children, when it comes to normalizing periods, just in general? What conversations do you think parents should be having with their kids?
I think age appropriate. I mentioned it recently, I think. But my sons, I have pads everywhere in my home.
Right.
By extension of the work I do, they know them as mom diapers.
Okay.
Because now,
right.
I was like, how am I? One is 4, the other one is 7.
Yeah.
And so now they know this is something that moms use. I've been asked how often, because kids nowadays have a lot of agency also.
Yep.
So I'm asked and they say, once a month, which they were like, huh. Okay. And then they took it and didn't ask, but I kind of leave it open. But I also know that because blood can come across as traumatic for them.
Right.
So now what I'm trying to, and I've just started this recently, is to let them know that not all blood is bad.
Right.
And so that as they get older, they piece it together, or we're able to piece it together.
Yeah, you're able to carry on the conversation.
By saying, not all blood is bad. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. So I think with children, it's about having age appropriate. Where are they? What do they understand? If they see a pad and they ask, what is it? Don't grab it and stuff it in your bag or throw it in the cupboard and be like, you saw nothing.
Oh, no, that's mine.
Yeah, that's mine. What you saw is a figment of your imagination.
Don't touch mommy's things.
Don't touch mommy's things.
Because that used to be, the standard.
That used to be the standard because I guess they didn't know better.
Right.
And the information wasn't there like we now know.
Like we now have,
So now I'm like, if they see something, and because my son who's 7 turning 8, now girls are menstruating as young as 9 or 10. And I know that in the next year or so, I will have the conversation with him in a way that if this happens to a girl, rather than laughing, tell the teacher or just look for support. Because it starts by also kind of planting the seed of allyship and understanding and not fear and horror.
True.
So I think there is a role for parents and guardians and teachers who themselves have a lot of preconceived notions. So they also have to unlearn.
True.
And do the education, but keep it super simple. And then as they grow, have a check-in, a reminder, so that it becomes kind of something that, folks told me about this. It's totally normal.
Yeah.
And somebody told me the other day, I don't know if it was a friend of theirs, but their 13-year-old son, a girl stained, and he immediately gave her a sweater.
Oh, that's lovely.
And I'm like, there we go.
Yeah.
Because
something as simple as that act of kindness. That could have been the most traumatic experience for her. A lot of us had those experiences.
Exactly.
And even till now, you still think about it and you shudder.
Like, Dr. Claire is having palpitation. I shudder as well. I mean, I was 10 when I started my period. So I was a kid, and I had no idea. I was just like, I'm dying. For sure, I'm dying today.
For sure.
This is death. Then my mom wasn't ready to have the conversation with me because I was so young. So she was shell-shocked.
Right.
She's like, what do you mean?
Yeah, like how?
So how? So everything was shrouded in fear and shock. And I carried that for a long time. And then I've had a very problematic period because then I live with endometriosis.
Right, me too.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, yeah.
Oh no.
I'm the patient and the doctor.
Wow.
It's a crazy...
Yeah, we're going to need that story.
We're going to have to have that conversation.
We're going to have to have that conversation. But so it just starts with that, and so that they don't have to face the same shock. They kind of are able to navigate it with empathy at the very least, and solutions. Like, okay, she needs a sweater, she needs a pad, and she needs maybe painkillers, and then the rest will know. So
right. There are a lot of people who then come at us like, some things, you don't have to talk about them, right? Why do you need to bring up something like this? Why are you even talking about our period? This is an awkward conversation. You're putting me in an awkward position. These are things we know. Do you have to announce them?
Yeah.
And then we look at a situation like with Senator Gloria.
Yes.
And I believe it was intentional action. What would you call it?
Yeah, intentional action. Intentional act of activism, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Where she showed up in Parliament with a stained white pair of pants on. And the response... Yeah. The reaction. She was literally kicked out. That's what it led to. So when people come with the pushback of why are you so loud? Why is it necessary to keep hearing? Because everywhere I turn, you're talking about your period. This one is talking about pregnancy. This one is talking about painful period.
Yeah. You guys are everywhere.
Enough is enough. But I feel like situations like that show us why the conversations need to keep happening, right?
100%. I think there's such a discomfort around the bodies of women and also a policing on the bodies of women.
True.
And I almost feel like if people don't know what to do, the thing they turn to is shaming. And even before I go to what you raised about Senator Gloria, I remember being pregnant with Huru 8 years ago on TV. and being body shamed
There we go.
relentlessly.
It's actually
every day on the news.
Boggles my mind.
I'd be reading about politics. I've asked the big question, and all the answers are, you're too pregnant to be on TV, which to date, somebody needs to explain what too pregnant is. Why are you on TV and you're pregnant? The good thing is, again, for the first time, the dragon in me, because I felt like you're insulting women. I was like, it actually has nothing to do with me.
Mm-hmm.
It became a fight for women and women's rights.
Right.
And so, not that I was overthinking it, but I really pushed back.
Mm-hmm.
I'd wear tighter dresses on
Right,
days. When my bosses are like, imagine, I'm like, no.
They're like, imagine, please, also.
I'm like, it's okay. It expands, but it's really tight. Till the belly button sticking out. I'd sit on the side like I was very extra. And just fighting with people online in the DMs, fighting. And it kind of got picked up, which was so bizarre. It got picked up by radio and TV people saying, yeah, Janet's fighting. I'm like, wait, what? Why is this a thing?
Why is this even a conversation?
Until a lot of people were saying in DMs how much shaming they face in their workplaces, and they're afraid to speak up.
Right.
So they were like, thank you for speaking up. So I think we can underestimate, those of us who have agency, how much people who may not have it or access to it go through. And it goes back to what you said about Senator Gloria, something that's very natural, but because it's around a woman's body and it's supposed to be private, I almost feel like you people have made this a public issue. If you all just never shamed us and never stopped gaslighting us, imagine we'd all live in silence.
Yeah.
Relative silence about our periods.
We would never need to talk about
We never need to talk. You've made it a thing.
True.
And again, agency, I think, frightens people. And the best way they push back is by insulting and abusing.
Right.
Because you have the audacity to show up and speak up. And it was actually, I remember a female colleague who pushed back the loudest.
Yeah.
In fact, the speaker was awkward and he was just like, so me, I just think you need to go.
Yeah. I just want to
end whatever
experience. I just want to shut this down. I want this to stop.
It was awkward for him.
Exactly.
But the lady was like, why do you have to? Why do you have to? Well, we have to because what she did represents the millions of girls who can't
Exactly.
Who can't do
who
that.
Who don't even have the option.
Or who are so frightened and scared about what's happening in their bodies. Then they stain. Then you shame them and traumatize them and scar them for life. Literally for life.
Right.
The way you say you remember staining, there's people you'll hear about who remained with that trauma for years.
For years, yeah.
Or for some, it never left them.
Right.
And even when you ask how we speak to children, even for girls, it's about girls embracing this normalcy,
right?
And saying this is just a part of how your body grows, and it's a great part. It may come with pain and discomfort, and if it does, talk to me about it,
right.
But never feel ashamed,
right?
And so with Senator Gloria, it was a manifestation of the pushback on agency, ignorance, and just the ability to want to silence anything around women's bodies that's not sexualized,
right?
For the senator and the reactions, I wasn't very surprised. It was a bit sad because I'm like, man, people have been advocating for 10 years.
Right.
And it's almost like until this is completely and constantly mainstreamed, I feel like we'll keep going round in circles with it.
Yeah.
We'll keep having Menstrual Hygiene Day and then a lull and then Day of the Girl and a lull and then da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah.
But until it's mainstream media partner with people, digital media and podcasts and newspapers and schools and institutions, until it becomes a national, global, everyday conversation, it will be met with weird bouts of pushback. The other day, I think in Florida, there's a lawmaker who wants to ban girls from talking about their periods during break time.
Let me tell you, it's gotten to a point where like, is that even necessary?
That's the thing.
What is it about you that makes it even a conversation? There's some things you read sometimes. I just sit there and I'm like,
You're like, why is this? What has it got to do with you? But I think it goes back to policing.
Exactly.
It's like we kind of get to tell you what to do with your bodies.
Right.
And your bodies are for maybe like one thing only.
Right.
Anything else you say and do is immoral or not something that should be advocated for.
Right.
I truly believe that's what it is. And so we just have to keep normalizing self-love and loving our bodies, but also encouraging people to just say, our bodies are fine, they're healthy, whatever we're doing and they're doing is fine.
Yeah.
And you speaking out against that is shaming, and it goes against everything that we believe is right.
Exactly. Another thing I find very peculiar. These days I watch my language.
You caught yourself.
I've caught myself. Peculiar about us as Kenyans in general, and the culture that we have, the celebration we have about or around fertility, and how important it is to us that a woman should be able to have children. And in fact, we police that as well.
Yeah.
Let's not even get, that's a conversation for another day.
Yeah.
But the fact that we are so keen and so proud about our fertility and your ability to have children, but be the same people to turn around and shame girls and women about their period, which is the one thing that signifies physically that you're now entering your fertile stage. You're now entering your reproductive years.
Yeah. It's so warped.
Right?
It's so warped. I've made this joke before, like we're born into the gaslighting Olympics as women. Like there's no end.
There's no end to
when you'll be gaslit.
When is my body going to just okay?
Yeah.
Right?
It's either you're damned if you have a child, you're damned if you don't.
Right.
You're damned if you're have your period. It's just whatever happens to your body is just never about your business.
Yeah.
And again, really great to see a lot more women and men pushing back on that and saying whatever decision she wants to make is on her.
Yeah.
And I think it's just going to take a bit of time, but I think we've come from far. When I think about years ago, conversations like this, even around, the choice to have children or what my body's going through with my periods and being sick or whatever it is to do with our reproductive health and rights, was not really. It was a very closed off conversation. And it was shrouded with there's a lot of things you can't say.
Right.
But now people are talking about their different period experiences. People are questioning how, and trying to get second and third opinions, for example.
And we're finally normalizing that, especially in medical practice, that having a painful period is not normal.
I love that. Yes, that needs to be emphasized.
That's something we're
more.
emphasizing much more.
Yeah.
And also in the training, it's because we finally have come around to making diagnoses like endometriosis, like polycystic ovarian syndrome. We're starting to understand that it's very unlikely that a painful period is just normal.
Exactly.
Because you also have to understand medicine started primarily with men. And so we have an internalized training system that forgets or minimizes women's problems.
Yeah.
And especially so we went through this era where everything was hysteria. It was actually a diagnosis. Wow. It's actually, there are textbooks in medicine that have a whole little section describing hysteria and how you should knock her over the head or throw cold water on her. It's actually ridiculous.
Is this like Victorian England time?
Yeah.
Hysteria.
Hold her down and, tranquilize her.
Oh, no.
Because this is hysterics. And yet it probably was a painful period.
That's so heartbreaking.
Right?
That, like, you want to go back and just hug them and be like, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, this is when you say we have come from far. And where we are now, we're only going further.
Yeah.
I just think we can't stop. We have to keep this momentum of keeping the information alive and consistent and accessible to everyone, despite the pushback that we'll face.
True.
Because I always say progress comes with persecution. As long as you're standing for progress, there's always going to be people like, you need to stand back. Remember who you are.
Remember who you are. Remember your place.
Remember your place.
Remember your place.
That one.
Yeah.
And so you have to fight through that. I also think we need to be, and by we, maybe I'm talking about maybe the activist world, a lot more unified in our clarion call for access.
True.
I think sometimes it can be quite disintegrated and a little bit all over the place, even though I still believe every single noise is valid.
Right.
It's just sometimes we need to really shout about something collectively to really break through.
Right.
And I know it's going to happen. I think we're in an interesting time in history where people are feeling very audacious and brave enough to speak their truth.
Right.
And very soon they are going to outnumber the people who want to silence them.
That's
and
true.
There'll be a groundswell
and
people will just be forced to adjust.
True.
Yeah.
Again, just highlighting your point on, it can get frustrating because you feel like you're making so much progress. We've gotten so far. And then an incident like the Brown's cheese one happens. For context, for those who don't know, we had in the papers, it was highlighted that there was an episode of extreme period shaming with the Brown's Cheese Company, where members of staff were asked to line up and strip down to show who was on their period because I think it was a soiled pad or tampon or something was found in the wrong place. And one of the seniors, the managers, who I believe is a woman,
yes,
right, asked other members of staff to strip down and demonstrate, because we're going to catch the culprit. I read that in shock.
Yeah.
I remember getting goosebumps and going, what year are we in?
Right?
Again?
Sometimes you have to pinch yourself and be like, wait, 2023. Oh.
Right. Am I here by myself?
Am I here by myself?
Am I surrounded by aliens? What's going on?
Where am I?
Right.
Again, internalized social norms. And I think we were talking a little bit about it earlier, which is just, if something is soiled, why do we have to make it? Why do we have to add so much shame to it?
Why does there need to be ownership around it?
Exactly.
This person is probably has left it where it is or has made a mistake around it because of shame.
Yeah.
She didn't know what to do or how to manage herself during this situation. So she abandoned and ran. So why would you then shame her even more?
Yes.
And to the point of, because now we crossed over to human rights violations, because if you're asking me to strip down at my place of work,
you're violating me.
Right?
And, without my consent, it's just a complete violation. And again, I'm glad it became a big story, enough for there to be apologies issued and workshops. But it just shows this undercurrent. And I'm not sure why right now every workplace has not adopted. I mean, it'll take 1 or 2 sessions with your staff, literally, to normalize and to talk about this. So we need to challenge now organizations everywhere. Yes, in the country, but globally, to have an element of education on menstrual health, menopause, pregnancy, breastfeeding, just around bodies in women. Yeah, you might squirm or whatever, but the idea is to create a safe space. And then it should end with, if anybody is struggling or having this issue, there will be some information and products at the HR desk.
There we go.
Like that's a very simple thing to do. And I'm sure if Browns did it, the lady wouldn't have had to do that.
Yeah.
I know there's factories like TMZ and I feel like I've really butchered whatever I've just said. Thika Cloth Mills, TMZ.
I was like,
I caught myself. I'm like, no. I think there's another name, but let's just say one of the factories that did a menstrual health in the workshop training. And they'll talk about the difference it's made. They'll talk about how much more comfortable women are. Those who used to be in immense pain and used to skip work and be penalized now have official menstrual leave. There's bins, there's products at work. So I feel like that needs to be the next push, because by the way, if it starts with institutions, it trickles down.
It does trickle down.
Even schools will be forced to.
True.
So the Brown's cheese just made me and a lot of people realize it's because you're not normalizing it in the workplace.
True.
And it doesn't have to be a forever conversation. 1, 2, 3 sessions, a pamphlet, products, you're
End
good.
of conversation. Yeah. And you'll find that because you've normalized it, a lot of your staff are even more present in the workplace. You engage more. Your output is even better because I feel appreciated and respected in my workplace. It's such a small, simple tweak, right?
And validation. That's it. And I know for those who've done it, it's made the biggest difference.
Right.
Just confidence, like you're saying, feeling affirmed, feeling like you're in a safe space. And they say it actually, not that it should matter what the bottom line is, but the CEO says it has actually improved our bottom line.
Right.
Because people are now working with comfort so that just needs to be, I feel that needs to be one of the next biggest conversations is to normalize it in spaces where people are still facing shame and stigma.
Right. Finally, as we wrap this up, I had a lot of my audience reach out to me because I did mention I was going to have conversations around the culture of shame on various things. So this is just one of them around periods. But a lot of young women wrote in about trauma they still suffer from being shamed in one way or the other around their period. Either they had a staining incident back in school or at work. Others who have partners who find, even culturally, there are some cultures that believe a woman on her period is dirty, contaminated, all other. Again, I'm checking my language. All of it. That you're shamed to the point of being made to feel abnormal about your period. I just want, as we just tie this up and finish up, that you can give a little bit of advice to that young girl who's listening in, because that's who I'm doing this for. Because if we don't start, it has to start with us for us to create change for the next generation. But that young girl who's unaware or doesn't have enough information, who has already experienced something traumatic to do with her period, or just doesn't even know that a period is coming or what this is that's happening to me. What advice would you have for her? Speak to younger Janet.
Younger Janet who was 10 and she was like, I'm dying.
Exactly.
Wow, that's so profound. I I feel like I would want to say to her, just don't panic. Something really wonderful is happening inside you, even though it's coming with some things that you're not familiar seeing. You're not familiar seeing blood coming out of your body without any trauma. You're not familiar with having to use a product. It changes maybe the way you walk and act and talk, and it may do that for a while, but it doesn't change who you are. It doesn't change that gifted, smart, fun-loving girl.
Right.
It maybe shifts a little bit because her body is growing, but all of these things are actually pretty wonderful because it means you're healthy.
Right. Yes.
And so if you're feeling like there's a shame and a trauma, I'm hoping that you have one person that you're able to turn to. And I know, unfortunately, they may not have, but if you do, if you have a safe space, it's to have the conversation because you will be given the right tools.
Right.
If there are now there's a lot of information out there.
Right.
If it's a guardian or a friend or a parent, you can walk into Textbook Center, or you can safely go online and read a little bit about what's happening to your body.
Right.
And you'll realize, oh, wow, I'm blooming. I call it blooming.
Blooming, exactly.
Ever since Huru said you sat on a red flower.
Right.
I took it for this campaign I did earlier, and I put petals everywhere. And I'm like, we're blooming.
Yes.
You're blooming.
Because that's exactly what it is. You are blooming.
You're blooming. Yeah. You're healthy. You're fine. If there's pain, if there's discomfort, find the resource, find the safe space, find the safe person.
Right.
Just never let it hold you back from who you could be or who you are.
Right.
That's what I'd say. And I wish somebody had told me that. Like, you're fine. I know this is quite shocking. It may take you a while to adjust, but you're actually fine and you're actually healthy.
Yeah.
This is good.
Yeah.
Let's just now get you to sit in it.
Right.
And you'll find over time, you'll be so grateful. You'll literally thank God that you had your period. Yeah. And you'll find ways to manage it and you'll find ways to live with it, and you'll be fine. You'll be able to do whatever you want to do because now there's multiple products that allow for that.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And you actually have choices and options available. For me, I'll use the messaging I got from my mom. I'm very blessed that they are medical. So I got my information just before, about 2 weeks. It's like they could sense it because I got the information about my period 2 weeks before I got my period from both my mom and my dad. And it was the best way my mom put it to me was, you're about to become a woman. You're about to become stronger than anything or anyone else around you, because you're going to be navigating changes with your body, but still having to achieve at par, if not better, than those around you. And she didn't do a boys versus girl comparison, but that was the messaging, that despite the fact that you're going to have to deal with your period every month, you're still going to have to shine in class. You're still going to have to show up in your performances on stage, if you're in drama, if you're in music, because I was in everything. As a child, I was overachiever.
Yeah, love it.
And that message, and back then, and I still am a huge fan of the Transformers. Massive.
I did that the other day.
Optimus Prime.
I imitated him the other day on a video. Yeah. I love him, which I know sounds so bizarre.
I know.
But we love a robot.
Yes.
Dr. Claire and I love a robot called Optimus Prime.
We really do.
But yes, because of...
So my mom sort of likened it to the Autobots, because those were the good ones.
Yeah, the Autobots.
And she's like, you see how they can turn into cars right? And then they turn into robots and they still function and they actually achieve. That's what you're about to do.
Because of Dr. Claire, I'm now going to be using Transformers as the SI unit for talking about periods. Right? I was using it about the inner child work. That's what I did the video on. But I'm like, that is brilliant. That's
the best thing she ever did for
also,
me.
You've also answered how to talk to kids. I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, no, I really love that.
It's literally superpowers. You can put it, if you're a Marvel head, if you're a DC Comics kind of person, you can find one of the superheroes and attach it so that a girl stops to feel devalued. It's actually an empowering thing.
And the world wants you to be devalued because, again, pushing back on your agency.
Exactly.
Because they know how much power that holds.
Right.
Oh, that's such a beautiful way to put that. Thank you. I feel like I needed to hear that. Thank you.
And I think we will end there. This has been such an empowering conversation, even for me. Even as I sit here, I'm like, I'm sweating a little bit.
I've loved this. I've loved it.
For anyone who's watching or listening, please feel free to write in, leave a comment. For those who are shy, for those who want to talk to me anonymously, DM, message. I'll put in all our social media information in the description. I'll also put in Janet's as well. And if you have questions, if you would like to see a bit more as we carry on the conversation, because this is just a beginning. This is just a conversation starter. As we carry on the conversations among ourselves, I hope that you can reach out, and we will probably end up having another session where we can answer your questions if you have any. We can also just engage on social media a bit more. But more importantly, I just hope that if nothing else, this episode can serve as a tool. As you sit at home thinking about how am I going to talk to my daughter, how am I going to talk to my son about periods, I hope you can use this as a tool to start that conversation. If you're a child whose parents haven't had this conversation with you yet, play it accidentally on TV and then let it carry on from there. And I'm very excited and happy that I get to have this platform to have such conversations, because like you said, I can envision myself as a younger girl, and if I had these resources now, we would have there's phases we could have skipped. There's hardship we could have skipped.
There's character development we didn't need to go through.
We didn't need to go
basically.
So thank you so much, guys, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Have a good one.
Bye.